funding and deal making does appear to have slowed down. We'll talk about how it differs from geography to geography, but the high-level takeaway is that there has been a moderation of activity. How does this region compare to the rest of the world?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me. Globally, we've seen a slowdown dating back to 2022. Post-pandemic, interest rates at 0%, liquidity was extremely high. Since then, we've seen this slowdown gradually that started off in the US, and the region hasn't been immune to that. Having said that, I think the positive signs are that things are beginning to pick up. If you look at the global landscape, according to publications internationally, it's the first time you've seen 3 successive quarters of growth in venture capital deployment dating back to 2020. And if you use the international markets as an indicator for this part of the world, the positive is that the signs are pretty much the same. So for us, we see this as an inflection point towards more positive investment trends into the future.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the outlook for next year. And again, it's U.S. bank earnings season already coming through. Is that deal activity has started to pick up in some of these Western markets? Does that bode well for the markets over here as well?
I think so. I think that what the report basically highlighted is that early stage investment has returned. And that's the important deal flow for the rest of the funnel. Late stage is still very difficult, so those big ticket investments are harder to come by. But as long as you're building the bottom of the funnel, that is extremely positive for years to come in the future.
So let's talk about the intra-country divergence. It seems as though Saudi Arabia is leading the way on funding, but the UAE are leading the way on deal making.
Yep. So basically, many of the sovereign entities that are benefiting from oil prices are able to continue to deploy, whether it's through fund of funds here in the region, that then basically translate into venture capital investment. Both geographies have very strong government policies to focus on technology as a diversifier of the economy, and therefore they've become more resilient than other geographies.
Yeah.
And that capital deployment is key for the years in the future. And in Saudi, what was most interesting was it was the first time you saw year-on-year growth of non-mega deal funding of about 83%.
Oh, okay, so it is pretty positive then. I mean, you hear it, of course. It's good to see that the data backs up what we're witnessing and experiencing in terms of the IPO activity and all the deals that we talk about on the show. One of the questions that I have for you is, clearly there is a lot of interest in this region, and there's no shortage of funds that are moving here, looking to set up headquarters, etc. And I feel like in the past, a lot of funds came here for capital raising. And I wonder to what extent the paradigm has started to shift and that some of these international funds are actually looking for investment opportunities in the region. They're not just coming here for capital raising, but also looking to deploy capital as well.
That's a great question. What we tracked was an increase of 130% of funds that have been set up in the region over the last 12 to 18 months. Naturally, that takes a little bit of time to actually deploy into the ecosystem because deals tend to take 6 months in the making. They have attracted international investors. We've seen the likes of General Atlantic making investments here in the region. Even if you go early stage, Antler and other accelerator programs have come to deploy. We naturally believe that the mandate to invest has encouraged many of those international investors to seek opportunities here in the region, but that will likely reflect in data in the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah. And, when you talk about early stage VC investing, clearly the focus and the dream for all of these funds is to become a unicorn, so valued at $1 billion. How did the number of regional unicorns in the region compare to what we're seeing in the rest of the world?
It's a little bit difficult because the concept of unicorns can be paper, and you actually only have realized unicorns when someone's been acquired or there's an IPO. On paper, though, we've seen a doubling in the number of unicorns in the last 3 to 4 years. But until we start seeing late-stage activity pick up, we won't be seeing that translate into numbers.
Right, so it works across all stages of the cycle. Final question that perhaps is a little bit more personal to you. I noticed that BlackRock has struck a $3.2 billion deal to buy private markets data specialist Preqin, which obviously does provide data on private markets, private funding trends, very, very similar to your own. Why is it important to have data analytics companies like your own company in the market ecosystem?
Look, I think many people say that data is the new oil, and it's very difficult to quantify that. And the deal with Preqin basically highlights the importance of that data. A platform like MAGNiTT focused on private markets here in the region where data is opaque. It's very important to have credible, accurate data that people can reference for decision making.
Yeah.
And a deal like that really highlights the importance of that for not only here, but the global dynamics, like a company like Bloomberg.